This is an excerpt from The Drum, A History by Matt Dean. Follow the links below to find out more or to purchase the book. History of Rudiments. Rudiments are a series of patterns upon which all drumming techniques and sticking patterns are based. These are the basic foundation exercises that provide the ability to play anything and everything that a drummer will ever play. Even those who never formally learn these exercises will inadvertently use them. A self-taught punk rock drummer playing a fast snare roll to build up for the chorus will most likely execute a single stroke roll, which simply involves playing alternate hands at an even tempo. It is the proficiency of such rudiments and the technique with which they are played that is often the limit of how fast and how accurately a drummer can perform a specific pattern. In short, these are crucial for a drummer's progression on the instrument. It is also by use of these uniform patterns that pieces of music can be taught to different drummers and they will know exactly how to play them. They are the vocabulary with which the musical phrases are communicated for consistent playing and accurate learning. Rudiments have been in use for several hundred years in one form or another. As mentioned previously, the Swiss mercenary soldiers popularised the fife and drum, which triggered the demise of the pipe and tabor and the rise of the side drum. This larger drum needed a dedicated player as opposed to the pipe and tabor, which used one man simultaneously for both instruments. The side drummer now had 2 free hands to play, and so this was an instrument on which complex rhythms could be formed. These complex patterns made use of various techniques that had to be learned by rote for groups of drummers to play in unison. Battle signals needed to be learned accurately for soldiers to recognise the rhythms and understand the commands. Each exercise was learned with onomatopoeic words such as dada mama for the long roll. With these early fife and drum corps, the Swiss military, and in particular the Basel drummers, began using rudiments in the late 15th century, and by 1620 a form of drum notation was being used in Switzerland to record these exercises. From here they migrated through France, Scotland and then England, being updated at each stage to suit each country's own needs, with Scotland especially developing a strong reputation in high standards. By the 17th century, the British presence in America meant the troops had brought their version across the Atlantic, and the American military were adopting these rudiments into their culture. By 1812, Charles Stewart Ashworth had compiled a book with his set of rudiments primarily intended for use by the US Army and Navy. Throughout the 19th century, other drummers felt the need to publish their own instruction books for rudimentary drumming, and so in 1861, George Bruce and Daniel Emmett published such a book, followed by Gardner A. Strube, who in 1869 published a book by the Order of the National Guard of the New England States, and then John Philip Sousa published a book called Trumpet and Drum in 1886 for the emerging US Marine Band and their drum and bugle corps, before J.M. Flockton published his version in 1897. As the 20th century came and the role of the drum evolved with the advent of the trap set, rudiments became less important to many players. Nevertheless, many drummers still recognised their importance, but there was increasing frustration with the variations between different teachings. A standardised set of rudiments was needed, and it took a group of respected drummers, with none other than William F. Ludwig at the helm, to put this into action. In 1932, this collection of drummers from across America congregated in Chicago and began to choose 13 standard rudiments from the many that were available. These rudiments would be the standard at which a member must be able to perform in order to gain membership into their group. The group was to be known as the National Association of Rudimental Drummers, or NARD. Beyond the 13 rudiments necessary for entry into their group, they also planned to double that number, with the second set intended for those drummers who had accomplished a sufficient level with the first group and saw the benefits of motivating themselves to learn a second. On December the 10th, 1935, NARD sent out a bulletin to the 246 members of the association, asking for their votes on which rudiments should be included in the full 26 rudiment list that they intended as the standard. Ludwig sent out another bulletin on February the 3rd, 1936, detailing the results of their votes. Here he noted that the principal difference between the existing rudiment studies was the placement of accents. This would now be a thing of the past. The options were drawn from several authors' lists, and these lists consisted of the Charles Stewart Ashworth Rudiments List, copyrighted in 1812, the Bruce and Emmett Rudiment List from 1861, the Gardner A. Strube Rudiment List that was adopted by the US Army in 1869, the John Philip Sousa Rudiments List of 1886, the J. M. Flockton Rudiments List, copyrighted in 1897, and the Sanford A. Moeller Rudiments List from 1921, revised in 1929. Of these many rudiment options, they were whittled down to 13 that were adopted in 1934 to obtain membership to NARD. These were the long roll, the 5-stroke roll, the 7-stroke roll, the flam accent, the flam paradiddle, the flamicue, the ruff, the single drag, the double drag, the double paradiddle, the single ratamacue, and the triple ratamacue. The second list of 13 completes the 26 standard drummer's rudiments, and these are the single stroke roll, the 9-stroke roll, the 10-stroke roll, the 11-stroke roll, the 13-stroke roll, the 15-stroke roll, the flam tap, the single paradiddle, the drag paradiddle number 1, the drag paradiddle number 2, the flam paradiddle diddle, lesson number 25, and the double ratamacue. In 1928, the Swiss Basel drummer Dr. Fritzberger concocted the monolinear notation system for rudiments. His system utilised a single-line staff upon which he wrote the notes in the recognised form and note values. His input was to place the right-hand notes above the line and the left-hand notes below the line, thus enabling the readers to easily identify the sticking and concentrate on the notes rather than L's and R's for sticking instructions. In 1985, the Percussive Arts Society, PAS, attempted to reorganise the work of NARD by whittling the 13 essential rudiments down to just 7. They also added 14 rudiments to NARD's total of 26, which resulted in the 40 PAS International Rudiments. The other development was to display them in their sticking groups in categories such as single-stroke rolls, multi-bounce rolls, double bounce rolls, drag rudiments, flam rudiments, and diddle rudiments. The added rudiments were the single dragadiddle, the flam drag, the inverted flam tap, the patafla-fla, the single flammed mill, the single paradiddle diddle, the triple paradiddle, the 15-stroke roll, the 17-stroke roll, the 6-stroke roll, the triple-stroke roll, the multiple bounce roll, the single-stroke roll, and the single-stroke 4. In fact, PAS released a DVD in 2008 titled The Rudiment Project, with the intention of highlighting the benefit of studying rudiments in a variety of musical applications. Throughout the 20th century and into the 21st, other drummers have continued to publish their own interpretations of rudiments and various applications for them so that others may continue to benefit. Although the origins of rudiments lay in Europe, the Americans have really been at the fore of their development since the exercises crossed their shores with the British soldiers. Leading up to and beyond the American Civil War, the drum corps grew in competitiveness, and contests sprung up, in which the musicians would compete for supremacy. Although friendly competitive rivalry between the different companies' drummers had doubtlessly been in existence for many years before. Following the Revolutionary War in 1783, many army musicians returned to civilian life and set up fife and drum corps in their hometowns, and the popularity of such groups spread across the country. Some chose to play traditional pieces, with traditional scoring at the traditional slower tempos of around 110 beats per minute. These groups were known as ancient corps and grew significantly in the state of Connecticut. By the Civil War in 1861, rudimental drumming was hugely important for signalling, and the musicians had grown from initially having 1 or 2 drummers for each company into large bands such as the Marine Band, which was established by an Act of Congress in 1798. The fife had been largely replaced by the louder bugle in the time of the Civil War. This was an excerpt taken from a book which covers the subject in far greater detail, The Drum, A History by Matt Dean, published by Scarecrow Press. It is a comprehensive study into the history of the drum from the earliest evidence, looking deep into every culture across the world to chart the migration of the drums we know today and how religion, mythology, politics, communication, military use, survival, technology and fashions affected this evolution. This reference book seeks to answer many of the questions as to how the drum became the powerful and emotive instrument that we enjoy today. Follow the links below to find out more or to purchase the book.